In this guide, why bearer tokens can be stolen and replayed from anywhere in the world, how DPoP binds a token to a private key so a stolen token is cryptographically useless, what the signed proofs look like on the wire, and why RFC 9449 makes DPoP the new standard for high-security API access. Identity Expert, powering you to be an expert in identity. Today we're unpacking DPoP, demonstrating proof of possession. In the last episode, we looked at PKC, which stops your authorization code from being stolen mid-login. But PKC hands the job off once the access token is issued. That token is a bearer credential. Anyone who gets their hands on it from a log file, a memory dump, or a compromised network can replay it from any machine in the world. DPoP is the mechanism that closes that window. It binds the token to a cryptographic key that only your client holds. Let's break down exactly how. Before the technical detail, let's make the problem visual. Classic bearer token, a hall pass you can photocopy. Anyone who finds a copy in the hallway gets free movement. Every copy looks identical, and the teacher at the door has no way to tell which one came from the original. Steal the pass, copy it, hand it out, they all work equally. DPoP changes this entirely. The pass now has to be signed live, right in front of the teacher, with today's date and hour written on it. A stolen copy from an hour ago fails immediately, the time is wrong. A copy made in advance for next period fails too, it hasn't been signed yet. The teacher isn't just checking that a pass exists, they're verifying the signature was just made right now for this moment. That in one image is what DPoP does at the API layer. The token is still your hall pass. The DPoP proof is your fresh signature on it. A thief might get the pass, but they cannot sign your name. Let's make the threat concrete. In the classic bearer token model defined in RFC 6750, access tokens are opaque strings. They offer no evidence of who is presenting them. The risk has three common shapes. First, token leakage from logs. Access tokens frequently appear in server logs, proxy headers, or analytics pipelines. Any engineer with log access can replay them. Second, man in the middle at the resource server. If TLS terminates at a load balancer and the backend sees traffic in the clear, tokens are visible to the network. Third, compromised client storage. A cross-site scripting attack against a SPA can exfiltrate tokens from memory. Once stolen, a bearer token grants the same access as the legitimate client until it expires. DPoP makes all three of these theft scenarios non-exploitable. The stolen token is cryptographically useless without the corresponding private key. DPoP works in 4 moves. First, the client generates an asymmetric key pair, typically P256 ECDSA at startup or per session. The private key stays in memory and is never exported. Second, before requesting a token, the client constructs a DPoP proof, a compact JSON web token signed with the private key. The proof header carries the type DPoP plus JWT and the full public key in JWK format. The payload carries the HTTP method and URI of the request, a unique JWT ID for replay prevention, and the current time. Third, the authorization server receives the token request with the proof in the DPoP header. It verifies the signature using the embedded public key, checks the JTI claim hasn't been seen before, validates the HTM and HTU match the current request, and issues a DPoP-bound access token. The token contains the thumbprint of the public key in the CNF claim, short for confirmation. Fourth, for every API call, the client sends a fresh proof in the DPoP header alongside the token in the authorization header. The resource server verifies both. The token's CNF thumbprint must match the proof's public key. If an attacker replays the token without a valid proof, the thumbprints don't match. Request denied. Here's what the HTTP actually looks like. The token request is a post to /token, the standard OAuth parameters plus one new header, DPoP, carrying the signed proof JWT. The proof JWT decodes to a header with type DPoP plus JWT, algorithm EAS256, and the full JWK public key object, and a payload with HTM post. HTU the token endpoint URL, IAT the current Unix timestamp, and JTI a unique identifier for this proof. The authorization server responds with a standard access token JSON body, plus token type DPoP rather than bearer. Now when calling the API, the authorization header carries DPoP and the token, not bearer. A second DPoP header carries a fresh proof for this specific request. Its HTM is GET, and its HTU is the resource endpoint. The proof also carries an ATH claim, the base 64 URL encoded SHA-256 hash of the access token itself. This binds the proof to this exact token, preventing proof substitution attacks. DPoP neutralizes 3 concrete attacks. First, token replay from logs or storage. An attacker who extracts a DPoP-bound token cannot use it. Every request requires a fresh proof signed with the private key. Without the private key, no valid proof is possible. Second, proof replay. The JTI claim is a unique identifier the server must track within the token's lifetime. Replaying a captured proof fails because the JTI has already been seen. The server rejects duplicate JTI values. Third, cross-endpoint token misuse, using a token issued for one resource server against another. The ATH claim binds the proof to the exact token bytes. The HTU claim binds the proof to the exact endpoint URL. Presenting a valid token to the wrong endpoint fails the HTU check. The nonce mechanism, defined in RFC 9449 Section 9, adds a server-issued challenge that the client must include in each proof. This closes a window where an attacker might generate proofs in advance. When a server returns a 401 with DPoP nonce, the client retries with the nonce included in the proof payload. Without the server's nonce, pre-generated proofs are worthless. As of 2026, DPoP has moved from experimental to published standard. RFC 9449 was published in September 2023, making DPoP a full IETF standard. The OAuth 2 Security Best Current Practice, RFC 9700, explicitly recommends DPoP for sender-constraining tokens in browser and mobile clients, calling it preferable to MTLS for applications that cannot manage client certificates. FAPI 2, the OpenID Foundation's high-security profile for financial-grade APIs, accepts DPoP or MTLS as the sender-constraining mechanism. And in practice, browser-accessible APIs prefer DPoP because MTLS requires certificate provisioning that browsers don't support. If you're building an API that processes anything sensitive, financial data, health records, identity decisions, DPoP is no longer optional. It's the mechanism that makes token theft non-exploitable. All primary sources cited in today's guide are listed on screen. You'll find direct links to the RFCs and specifications in the video description below. If this breakdown helped you understand the topic better, please subscribe to Identity Expert. We publish a new protocol deep dive every week. Thanks for watching. If there's a specific identity standard, authentication flow, or security protocol you'd like us to cover next, drop it in the comments below. We build our content based on what the community asks for. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an episode.